be it the entire digital automation journey. So what problems are you or your team trying to solve? If you can walk us through that.
Yeah, I think for us it's been an evolution, which is interesting. I don't think we sat around the table and said we need to start a digital transformation strategy. What we decided is we had really two business outcomes that we identified that were hugely paramount to us and other things we were working on. So the first thing is you have to make choices, right? We weren't going to boil the ocean and solve everything. But the two things we were really focused on, and this is earlier than 4 years ago, was one, we needed to become a more customer-centric organization, meaning put the customer at the center of everything we were doing. And then second, we wanted to create a more modern, resilient, flexible organization that could quickly respond to changing environments, right? And if you think about Fannie Mae of old, we've always been a pretty good tech company, but kind of set in our ways, didn't really involve customers, and we would build stuff and throw it over the fence. Our customers would look at us like, what is this? This doesn't really help me, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's Fannie Mae. And we really wanted to move away from that paradigm to really co-develop with our customers, but we didn't really know how to do it. So our first part of our early stages of what we would call, we didn't call it digital transformation back then, but in the early phases of what I'm looking back as sort of a digital transformation is we started small, right? I think that's another key important point. We had lots of things we wanted to do. We really made a decision that we were going to focus first on our customer frontline teams. We needed to, if we really wanted to put the customer at the center of everything we were doing, we needed to move away from single dependency customer relationship managers, right? And we really wanted to create teams of individuals that could support the customers and really empower those teams to make decisions versus everything having to go up to the top in a decision and then coming down. We wanted to, as customers called in and had issues, we wanted a team of experts across the life cycle of the loan, risk managers, lawyers, technology people, customer relationship people, to form what we called a pod, very similar to Agile. And we took some lean and Agile principles and embedded it in our customer teams. And so previous to that, you had 10 people you had to call to fix one issue. Now, back then, you really called into your pod or your what we called customer relationship teams back then. And they were able to pull all the stakeholders into the group and really cut down decision-making down to hours and minutes versus days and weeks. And that was huge for us, right? And then, we saw great progress in this model and we began to look further. Where else can we, what else can we do in this sort of context? And then we started looking at our product development processes, right? 4 or 5 years ago, we had a mix of Agile and Waterfall. We made the decision to go all in on Agile, which was, I think, a very important decision for us. And not just sort of Agile in ceremonies, but really how can we invite our customers into that Agile process and really co-develop with them. And so we invested a lot in Agile maturity. We invested a lot in some of the things you bring with Agile, like very defined product owner roles. So we moved away from a project management centric organization, which if you think about, nothing wrong about project managers, but they're more output based, right? They focus on a plan and they focus on, did you hit a date? Whereas we wanted to set up a new skill set in the organization centered around product management and product owners, and we wanted them to be outcome based, right? And that's a nuance, but it really has evolved our thinking in things we invest in, and things we bring to market, and how we engage our customers around that. And so that's really, we started small. We started on a very specific segment of our business. We wanted to bring the customer into our world, and then we started expanding that out into my space. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been fully maturing that space.
Great. It looks like a great story. So I know there are so many processes, right? So it must be pretty daunting. So how did you or your team, or what steps did you take to bring this model to life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And once again, you can get bogged down into trying to solve every problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think for us, and especially when you want to speak to just digital products at Fannie Mae, we wanted to focus on foundational cultural elements of the transformation, right? We wanted to bring people along and get buy-in. We wanted to empower those individuals to actually make decisions as part of the transformation. We wanted to create a different culture around test and learn versus command and control, right? And we wanted a new way to collaborate. These sound like simple cultural things, really, really hard when you bring them to the masses, and really, really hard. I've been at Fannie Mae 27 years, really, really hard when you've been operating in a zero risk command and control environment. And then you start to roll things out like, well, you make the decision. You're closest to the customer, or, why don't you try it? And if we don't quite get them right or wrong, that's okay, right? What did you learn from it? And move on. And so for us, first, we focused on all the foundational capabilities that we needed culturally with individuals, skill sets that either needed to be new, brought into the firm, or updated. And then we wanted to create an environment where people were inspired, and we wanted people to be part of the digital transformation. We didn't want to do it to them. So one of the most important things or decisions we made is we weren't going to use digital transformation as a way to sort of cut staff, right? Because we wanted a very positive connotation when it came to transformation. And in our space, we really were using the words innovation at scale. And so we wanted to inspire people. We wanted them to be part of it. And I think that was really significant to us, as we put a lot of thought into the foundations that we wanted to set, especially culturally. And then, after we felt good about some of the cultural foundations we were laying in, we then went sort of to a design process, and we wanted to design a new way of working. 3 years ago, pretty mature and agile, but we were doing agile in name only, meaning we had, internal product owners that really weren't talking to customers. It wasn't linked up to strategy. Backlog management was done at the individual level versus across the portfolio of products within the value streams that we were working on. And so we created something that we called digital operating model. It's just a way of working. It's an operating model. It was designed to give people sort of a path on how to navigate through this new cultural change, and how we want products to be developed, how we want ideas to maturate within the organization. And for us, we did a lot of go and sees, right? And we went to a lot of, across the world, actually, believe it or not. We wanted to see how other people were changing their culture, implementing digital products in a way that brought value to their customers. And I'm a big believer in, a lot of these problems have already been solved before. You don't need to recreate the wheel. What you need to do is modify these approaches to fit your culture, because you just can't drop, someone else's operating model into your business. So I think that was the second stage, and it was very beneficial, because we were able to then leverage our agile maturity in a way that we never thought we could. We were able to invite customers into the process, and we were getting good certainty around value delivered to market. And a lot of ideas that probably would have been squashed in the past because of the command and control nature of the way we work, these were flourishing to the top, because we empowered our teams to not only bring ideas to the table, but debate them, collaborate differently. Don't collaborate in a way that you feel like you're going to hurt someone's feelings because you don't agree with their idea. Engage that individual, make the idea better, or more importantly, don't go forward with it. And either one of those as part of your digital transformation is a huge win, because Fannie Mae's culture prior to us undertaking this, we were I would categorize ourselves as the sunk cost kings and queens of the world, meaning I've already put $2 million into a product, keep going. Well, it's not giving any value. That's all right. We've already sunk so much money into it, keep building on it. And the other part of our digital transformation, digital op model, that allowed us to make really important decisions, in the first year on a yearly basis. Now we're down to monthly, where we're able to start and stop things based on what we're seeing in the environment. And then we're in our third stage now, which is all about maturity, right? How can we continue to mature our digital transformation? How can we continue to mature our digital operating model to create more efficiency and provide more value? And we think about value across 3 dimensions at Fannie Mae. We think about most certainly customer value, right? There's also got to be Fannie Mae value. You can't have any type of transformation if you're not thinking about your own firm's value and what you want to get accomplished. And then third, we really focus on employee value. What are the employees getting out of coming to work every day? Are they growing their skill set? Do they feel like there's opportunity to grow? Are they learning? Do they feel like they're participating in the success? And once we were able to really sort of create equilibrium across those three value points, we were able to see much better efficiency and much better time to market.
That's really pretty insightful. Thank you. So you talked about change, you talked about people, and talking about change, we are going through a kind of funky fluid environment at this point. A lot of companies in this year, they have real life pressure test, be it business models. So how did this crisis test your business or digital strategy?
Yeah, I think, we, in early March, I don't know what the dates were, but I'll make them up. I think on March 10th, we all got the word go home.
Yeah.
Everybody in the company. And then in the March timeframes, we started seeing, rates go down. We started seeing a lot of shelter in place orders. And a lot of our customers, pipelines started getting clogged up, to be honest, because, for those who had invested in a digital way to do VOIs or VOEs, they were at the mercy of someone picking up the phone, right? And if everybody was working from home, how would you get in contact with them? How would you get in contact with employers? And so immediately in March, we saw some real benefits to the last 3 years of all the investments we've made around automated VOI, VOE, and VOAs. We saw immediate benefits in sort of how we thought about e-mortgages. And then a lot of capabilities around data. So all of the foundational stuff we built, I think really validated our strategy and really made us realize that we got to double down, number one. And then number two, which was something that we really focused on, but we don't talk a lot about. Part of our digital transformation I mentioned was actually culturally transforming how we do work, right? And ultimately, our philosophy is everything we do in work is solving problems, right? And with our digital operating model, we created 8 to 10 person teams. We call these things squads, a term used in Agile. And instead of giving a squad 10 problems to solve, we gave them one problem to solve. And that one problem could take 3 months, it could take 10 years. It doesn't really matter the length, but we really wanted experts to focus on one problem. And then we would align those squads, into the ability to manage like work in the concept of a journey, a customer journey. And the other thing we saw in the crisis is in early March and April, as we started creating a bunch of lender letters out to, we're going to have these flexibilities around appraisals. We were able to get those flexibilities into our systems in less than a week because we changed the way we work, right? And I think that's what I'm most proud of is the teams were ready. Even though we didn't know we were going to have a COVID crisis when we started this journey. And I think that's the other thing about digital transformation or any type of transformation. You don't know when you're going to need it in different ways. And because of the foundations we put in around organization, because of the foundations we put in around culture, and especially the 3 culture traits around empowerment, test and learn, and a different way to collaborate, as our credit policy teams and our business teams were putting out flexibilities around appraisals, around different flexibilities for remote online notary and power of attorney flexibilities. We were able to embed those into our products fairly quickly. And then as we started to transition away from solving those problems into the forbearance issues, we were able to collect a bunch of data from our partners, servicers, and strategic partners. And then we were able to see, okay, this is what we have coming down the pike. These are the types of modification programs we're going to have to need ready for these consumers as they're ready to come out of forbearance. And we're able to update, the back end of our servicing systems fairly quickly too, all because of the investments we made in digital.
Sure. Wow. So you talked about, I know, the next trends. I was just, you mentioned somewhere. So what do you think the next big trend would be for digital automation in the coming years?
Listen, you hear words like AI, ML, blockchain, robotics, those things are all great, right? Don't get me wrong. And they're much needed, right? Especially when you think about a modernized tech stack. And for us, the other thing I would tell people as they begin to think about digital and digital transformation is define it. we define digital across 3 dimensions. One is most certainly a modernized tech stack. There's no doubt about that. And we've been updating our tech stack. We're completely all in on AWS. I think Cason mentioned that, it's no longer a choice anymore to be cloud and cloud ready, and all of the value you can get out being a cloud native company, which we're starting to realize some of that. So the tech platform is most certainly a dimension you need to focus on, but you also need to focus on people and culture, right? You've got to make sure you have the right people in place who can manage and work through this transformation, because it is change. It's big change. And change lots of times scares people, especially the lower in the organization. They think their jobs are going to go away, yada, yada, yada. And then the third one is, for us, digital should be about changing the way we work in our business processes, right? I would never recommend layering in modern technology on top of an old business process. You're not going to get the benefits out of it, right? And so for us, right, we continue to see data as the most important thing ever, right? And lots of dimensions around data. One, understanding the data you have in the walls of your own firm and how you can leverage that differently. And that's where AI and ML and all these things you can sit on top of, sort of standardized, good quality data. We also think going direct to source in the mortgage finance process is really, really important. And through our day one certainty and data validation services, we're starting to do that and rethinking ways we can continue to go to source and get data. So for us, it's a trend that's been out there for a while, but we think, the key ingredient to digital transformation is data, right? And how you can cultivate data, how you can make sure it's of good quality, how can you rely on it? And then all these other tools that are out there can become useful for you. I guarantee if you put an ML or an AI on top of bad data, you're not going to get the results you want. And so we've been spending a lot of time focusing on our data infrastructure so we can get to the next best things for us in our business.
For sure. I think data is gold, because every company, as you've said, it's like everybody talks about data and AI and all, as you said. So thank you for that. And my last question to you would be, what do you say to a company who's just beginning to think through a full-scale digital automation or digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, be clear on the problem you're trying to solve, right? Because you can be all over the place if you're not really clear on what the problem is. And we teach people at Fannie Mae to focus not just on the problem, but when you do an effective problem solve through lean and lean management, you usually decompose one big problem into lots of small problems. And that's what we did, right? Don't try to boil the ocean. I've said that a couple of times. Right? You can be big in your moonshot, but as you start small, get some early wins. Then you'll get momentum, and that's hugely important. Always start with your people, right? Figure out how you can build the right culture and operating model that fits your company, and really challenge and empower your team to drive those business outcomes or those process and technology updates that you want to do. Don't force it from the top down. I know top down doesn't work at Fannie Mae. It may work at other companies. For us, creating that cultural foundation was huge, because people then bought in and they were able to then, all of us hire really smart people, use them. They're your greatest asset.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Don't be worried where you hit lulls, or don't be worried to pivot, right? I think the other thing that Agile and visiting a bunch of startups has taught us is embrace the pivot. Pivots usually are good if you have sound data going into those pivots. Don't just pivot to pivot. But lots of problems that you're trying to solve and lots of ideas and hypotheses you have don't hold up all the way through, right? They change, and be willing to embrace those changes. For us, we had to be patient. Right? I would say the first couple of years that we started this, we didn't really expect efficiency gains. We really wanted people to change the culture. And so we didn't put pressure on change the culture. No, by the way, reduce staff by 15% or create an efficiency target. In our maturity phase, we're doing that now. And then, like I said, build intangible small wins. It's amazing how much the small wins mushroom into huge momentum that create big wins. And like we tell people, you never know when your name is going to be called. And I'll give you a perfect example. The last 3 or 4 years, we've invested heavily on the origination side of our business, desktop underwriter, loan delivery, DVS, data validation service, e-closing, appraisals, all the things we talked about. And while we've invested some in servicing, we haven't invested as much in servicing. Well, when the crisis hit and forbearance hit, we picked up the phone and our servicing teams need to be first and foremost. But because they invested in all the things we asked them to invest in, they were ready, right?
Okay.
And we were able to do lots of things really fast because they were ready. And so we always talk to our teams. You may not think you're in the forefront of sort of the company's priorities. Those priorities tend to change frequently. Your number will be called or your name will be called. And when your name is called, be ready. And I think that was really, really important for us. And we didn't really see that early on, but now it's really important for us to factor that in as we do new things.
Sure. Henry, I'm getting flooded with questions. I'm going to ask one last question before Brad snatches the limelight away from me for the next speaker. What is Fannie Mae's, Mohammed Rashid has said, what is Fannie Mae's next D1C?
Say that again.
What is Fannie Mae's next D1C?
Oh, D1C, yeah. I think for us, I'll give you an interesting tidbit. We've had our desktop underwriter platform out for years and years and years. And, it was designed back in the early 90s to be an underwriter tool, right? And for us, while it's a great tool and during the crisis, it's handled all of the volumes, we're starting to rethink underwriting, right? And we're starting to rethink underwriting in a way that opens it up, meaning it's not just an underwriter tool. It can go up the funnel and point of sale. It can be used by other entities in the business. And then if you think about desktop underwriter, it truly is an ask and certify system, meaning I'm going to ask you for a bunch of data and you're going to give it to me and I'm going to give you a yes, no. I'm going to call balls and strikes on that data. I think for us in sort of the next evolution of what we consider to be D1C like capabilities is we should really be moving to a source and certify, right? You shouldn't always have to ask a borrower for 100 pieces of data. We live in a world and work in a world today where you can go out and find that data and it's trustworthy and it's direct to source, whether that's asset data, income data, employment data, other types of data. And how can you create a model where you're packaging that up and you're getting your underwriting back really fast? So that's really sort of all things we're working on now.
Cool. And I'll take one last question. Sandeep Mathur, his question to you is, how is the goal to get out of conservatorship impacting your team strategy?
I don't really focus on that. That's there's a bunch of work being done there. I've been at Fannie Mae 27 years, and I'll answer the question in this way. Is in the early days of 2008, 2009, when we got taken into conservatorship, everybody was like, oh my God, what do we do? And leaders around the firm said, what we can do is take care of our own space, right? Be the best you can in what we're doing and the other things will take care of itself. So that's sort of my philosophy now, right? For me, it's transforming mortgage finance. It's transforming how lenders do business with Fannie Mae, how borrowers do business with them. And then ultimately that other stuff will take care of itself.
Cool. Thank you, Henry.